Radio use. Radio is your #1 safety tool. And it's really important that you feel comfortable and confident using it. Okay. Who here does not have a cell phone? That's a pretty amazing device. It's a computer in your pocket, isn't it? As long as you got internet. Or you can get the signal from wherever it's coming from. So it's great, kinda. But sometimes the new techniques don't always work really well. The radio, very old technology. But a whole lot simpler. That phone's got all those apps, you got your keyboard, you're typing all the little texting messages and stuff. You don't do that on the radio, but the radio will always work. In fact, ham radio operators are the backbone of the nation if we have a really big national emergency and all the other technology fails. This old radio will still always work. And it's super, super simple. So we're going to just go really quickly again through how simple it is to use. And we're going to take a look at the radio. The nice thing about the radio is there's just a few things you need to remember about the radio. What isn't shown on here is the antenna because it would have been in the way. But there's only 2 knobs and 1 button that you have to ever use. I said the thing that's missing on this diagram is the antenna. So when you look at our radio, we have the antenna over here. It's just, that would have covered up the picture, so that's just off on the picture. But otherwise, that picture looks like all of our radios here. The things you're going to need to know about are the 2 knobs, the 1 button, and then a couple of other things that are on there. There's a speaker, there's a microphone, and then there's this alphanumeric display that will show information when you turn the radio on. Those are the other things that you're going to be looking at. And it's nice to know where they are located because it's vital that you know what it says in your display. But really, to make this thing work, you're just going to use 2 knobs and 1 button. It's a whole lot easier than your cell phone. So let's take a look at the first knob. First knob is the on-off volume button. If you look at the top, like this, you'll notice that there's got that little swoosh, and it gradually grows and gets wider towards the one, which means it's louder the further you turn it to the right, or clockwise. When you turn it on, what happens is this will make a sound. That lets you know that it's on. And the alphanumeric display will light up, and it will show you some information on it. So I'm going to demonstrate that really quickly, and you're going to hear what it does. I'll turn the volume all the way up just so you can hear it. Wasn't that exciting? Whew. But you know it's on. Okay, what you can't really see because it's so small here, it lit up nice and bright, and I could kind of see it when it first turned on. But I know it's on. That's all I've done. Now, I, again, turned it on really loud here so we can hear things on it. Normally, we wouldn't be worrying about that. And when you're checking it out, we turn it on loud enough so you can hear it. And then you don't want to keep it necessarily really loud out in the field either. And if you can, I personally find it best if you can get it up closer to an ear, whichever is the ear you like to use. Some people are right, some people are left. I'm more of a left-eared person. I don't know. That's the way we are. Because then I can keep it really low, and it doesn't bother me if I'm having a discussion with another person, but I can hear it because I need to be able to hear if somebody's trying to reach me. I need to be able to hear if there's something going on in the park that's a big incident, and they may have said we need to have radio silence to deal with this medical incident, which means we don't call for anything again, period, until that is over. Unless you also have a medical incident that happens at the same time, then you need to call that in, because that's the same priority as what's already going on. Okay? So that's it. I mean, it's just really simple, isn't it? So you're just going to want to make sure that it stays on. I have found in the past, that's why I don't want to allow it all the time. I have found for myself sometimes I like to use the clip and put it down here. Guess what? My pack, as I'm going like this, it hits this darn button, which is right on the end. And it sometimes turns itself off even. And I'll go, man, the radios have been awfully quiet today. So please pay attention to the radio. It's important that you keep it on so you can hear it at all times when you're out there. Okay? Just personal experience on that one. The next knob is the one right in the middle, the big one in the middle. But if you look at the top of it, it actually shows numbers 1 through 16, and it stops at 1 and it stops at 16. So this has a program of 16 different channels that we may be speaking on. And we're going to talk in more detail about what those channels are. The alphanumeric display down below will have a word in it, and that word is the channel that you have the radio currently set to. So right now this one says Paradise, so that's what it will be set to when I turn it on. Was that hard? Okay, just checking. So let's talk a little bit about, these are all of the different channel names. We have Paradise, T Woods, Gobblers, Packwood, Shriner, Crystal, Sunrise, Fremont, Tolman. Those are all known as repeaters. So let's talk real quickly. What's a repeater? A repeater is a device that has a big antenna that when I activate that repeater, it then grabs all the information that I am broadcasting and speaking on my radio to that antenna, and then it amps up the wattage, which means in effect volume, that it can go, that message can cover a further distance than I just can get with my radio to another place. That antenna makes it a lot bigger, and then it sends the same message out to that, to whoever I'm trying to contact on the other side of the world. It's really all that's happening. So those are what repeaters are. Then we have the ability of using channels that are called direct channels. We have West Direct, East Direct, Common 1, Common 2, and Common 3. Those are all direct channels. That really means line of sight. So if I'm a mile away from another person, and there's really not terrain in my way between me and where that other person is, I could use any of these direct channels and have an easy conversation with them. The nice thing about the direct channels is they are standalone types of things that's just radio to radio, so to speak. And it doesn't get broadcast throughout the park like everything on the repeaters. So sometimes you will maybe asked to go to one of these direct channels if we have an incident that isn't a big deal, we're just talking resources, you need some help, you want some more guidance, and we need to have a long conversation. We don't want that going out to the entire park and interrupting other things that are more important than our discussion at the time. Because there could be other incidences that are online that we didn't hear because our radio may be out of range for hearing what's going on if I'm in Sunrise over on Paradise. Very rarely will I hear anything on Paradise. Doesn't mean that somebody isn't talking on the radio over there on the Paradise radio. Okay. There's one other thing called the portable. That is used only occasionally if there's some big incident out in the wilderness area where the repeaters don't really work, or they don't want it to go through the repeaters because they need to keep it more private or whatever. And they will set up a special portable antenna, and then people involved in that incident will be told to go to the portable channel that they would be using. And that's not something I have ever been involved in personally, and I doubt any of us will, with the exception of a few people that do some other special things around there once in a while. But you'll know if they're asked to do that. So anyway, this particular chart is something that will be available to you. We're going to hand it out in a moment too, so you can use it to look at things, think about who you're going to call and what you might be calling on. And it also gives you an idea of what the areas covered mean. Okay, let's talk about the one button that you're going to use. So the one button you're going to use is this thing, the big, long one on the left side as you're looking at it of the radio. Officially, it's called the push-to-talk button. Some people have changed their name or the way they call it to just be the transmit button. I don't like push-to-talk talk because it's kind of confusing. What does that mean? I have to push and hold it while I'm talking. It's not like I push it and it just stays active, right? It's not like your cell phone is just kind of always on and working when you're talking to somebody. You're not really transmitting it unless you're holding that button down the whole time you're speaking. When you press that button down, what happens is immediately the microphone turns on. The speaker turns on as well. It sends a little tone behind the scenes to the repeater that's named on here to wake it up. And it takes about a second, a little less than a second, but it's best to say at least a second for that tone to reach the repeater and for the electronic stuff that's there to wake up and start to transmit anything after that first second, because it hasn't received anything yet, really, other than that tone that said, wake up. And so the number one problem that you might make is press the button and start speaking right away. Your first couple of seconds may not be heard by somebody else. And we'll find out how that's a problem in a moment. We also have these charts that show where kind of physically in the park our different repeaters are located. And we have the one down here called T Woods, which is just down the road here about a half a mile. And that's actually 9 miles outside of the park boundary. And then there's one down by Packwood, and that one is located 6 miles outside of the park boundary too. But depending on where you are, you may use different things. There's a little teeny weeny one up top that says Sunrise, and it reminds you it's summer only. So that one isn't even active yet because the Sunrise facility isn't open. It's still probably got 10 or 12 feet of snow on it too. And it's a little tiny area. It's not super powerful. It's down in the stockade, which is the little walled area behind the visitor center. So being down low, it doesn't transmit very well, and very, very far. At Paradise, when you're doing your roving, you're just going to stay on the Paradise repeater. And you'll be able to talk to anybody you need to talk to with no problem. If you come over to Sunrise, we're going to definitely want to do a little orientation for you if you want to be reminded. Because you might need to change to one of the 4 different repeaters, depending on where you are and where the rove is. If you're working up at Tipsoo on our east side, I'm still responsible for you at that location. And you'll be on a different repeater than you'll be if you're in the Sunrise area. And even in the Sunrise area, there are spots where you should be on Fremont or on Crystal. And then just to show you where there are some antennas, these aren't actually repeaters, that cover the west direct and the east direct. So that's a thing where what you're doing is when you're calling through those antennas, the antenna just kind of somehow miraculously, I don't understand the electronics myself personally, amp up the volume so that it can broadcast further in a line of sight type of thing. So it just creates more wattage than this thing has in itself. And again, I don't know electronically how that does that because I'm not one of those people. So let's talk about that standard radio call pattern. I think we're all familiar with it. Say who you're calling. So I might be calling, if I'm a VIP Smith, I may be calling Marlene, who is 560. So I would say 560, VIP Smith, and the channel I'm on, Paradise.
560.
And then I'm going to wait until I hear that 560. Okay, so I'm going to push things. I'm going to call her. I've got to release the button when I'm done with a call out to her. When I hear her reply, then I will push the button, count 2 seconds and wait and say, hey Marlene, I've got this thing going on here.
You're not going to say her name?
I'm not going to say her name, but...
Okay, let's check.
I know. Good catch. I would just say, I'm on the trail and we've got a dog that's loose and it's chasing the marmot. Okay? Because it's a dog that's loose and it's actually chasing the marmot, that's wildlife harassment. Clearly isn't a service animal either. We get to talk about service animals and pets later. And that's one where you're probably going to be needing some help. Probably somebody from law enforcement with that. So if you're unsure of who to call on that one, always call your coordinator. If it's an issue like that one in particular, I would probably be still calling dispatch because I know we really need to get law enforcement involved. And we'll talk about how do we decide that here in a moment too. Now the other thing is, so that's of course how we talk, and I think we've all experienced that and we've certainly heard it. Now I know some people are really shy about using the radio and carrying the radio because they're afraid of, I might say something wrong. It happens. We all do it. I just did it with Marlene, didn't I? Hey Marlene, no, I shouldn't have said that. That's okay, you'll be reminded kindly. Everybody, including dispatch, will remind you they have made mistakes as well. So don't really worry about it. The important thing is that you're making the call, right? Because something's going on and you're calling because you need help. It's the only reason you call. You need help. And depending on the kind of help is how you make the call. So on the other side of the fence though, what if you're out on the trail and Marlene happens to know that you're probably in a place where I understand something's going on. Then that's why you have to make sure your radio stays on. It's not down here getting turned off by your back. So you're going to listen for your name, like, okay, so she's going to call me now.
VIP Deeds 560 on Paradise.
VIP Deeds.
There's some activity going on with potential drones for the Edith Creek Basin area. Is there any way that you can get over to that area and check that out for us?
Copy. I'm on my way.
560 clear.
Not hard. It's just like a phone call, really, if you think about it. When I'm calling somebody, it's like, hey Marlene, I'm saying it okay this time because I'm on the phone, not on the radio. Hey Marlene. Who am I calling? This is Dave. Who am I? Now, it's not often that you say where you are, but you might say, hey, I'm at home. What's going on? And you have your conversation. So it's very much like what you're already used to anyway. 2 knobs, 1 button. Doesn't get much simpler.
Does copy mean I hear you, or does it?
Copy means I understood what you asked me to do. It isn't the words copy that, like you hear on TV and all the Hollywood shows. And even many people that were supposedly trained to use it in the military, I don't know why they would say that extra word is of no value. It's just copy. I got it. Okay. So then we have this nice little chart. Marlene talked about red, yellow, green. So the first thing that happens when you come on the scene of an incident. What's an incident? Something's going on that probably shouldn't be going on. It could be as simple as there's a bunch of people out off the trail. And it looks like they're setting up a picnic out there. What do we do? And if you really think that's too big and you need help, then you're going to call somebody to get you out, to have them come over and help you. And it may be the coordinator, myself, Marlene, Mo, when she's on duty. We'll be happy to help any way we can. Physically, we may not be able to do anything quickly depending on how far we are away from it. So just be aware of those types of situations. But by calling your coordinator, they, again, because they have everybody else's itinerary, may know that there is somebody who might be closer. And then we can call them to come and help you as well. Or we may tell you, yeah, you should call dispatch on this. Now, we're going to ask you to call dispatch because you're the one with the information, right? It doesn't do me any good to call them because they don't know what you're owing them anyway. So just be aware, call whatever you need. So there's the life-threatening issues or the red, non-life-threatening issues, resource issues. So life-threatening issue, the only thing that's a little different is when you're making that call, you're going to say a couple of magic words in your initial call to them. You're going to call dispatch, you're going to say VIP in your last name, And then you're going to say on what repeater you are, and you're going to say emergency traffic. That means, whoa, there's an issue that is life-threatening going on. And to the best of their ability, they will drop anything else that's going on in dispatch at that moment and contact you immediately. You are now the priority call in their office. So you want to make sure that it's really warranting that level of a response. Wait for dispatch to acknowledge you, and then you would say, oh, I'm at this location with the person who's showing these symptoms, and whatever is that life-threatening symptom. We'll look at some examples of those in a minute. Non-life-threatening things, again, we're going to be calling dispatch. These are usually things like they've got a sprained ankle, maybe it's broken, sometimes you can't tell the difference. And it depends on whether or not they can walk out on their own or with help or crutches, or are they going to need other kinds of assistance? Maybe they need to be carried out in a litter. So you'd still call dispatch, VIP, last name, on the repeater you're on, wait for dispatch to acknowledge you, and then you would say, I'm at this location with the person, and then describe the scene or the injury that's going on. Yes, I've got this dog off leash, chasing a marmot. Is there a law enforcement ranger available in the area? That type of thing. The one you're probably going to make most of the time is the green things. Those are what we're just labeling as resource issues. Those are the people that are off of the trail. Okay, there's a drone flying, and I've talked with the person, and I've gotten them to bring it down, or they're not being cooperative. Now, what do I do with that? Yes, there's a supposed service animal out here, but I've talked to them, and I've been able to determine it's not a service animal, but they're being very uncooperative with me. Can somebody come help me with me? So again, you'd be calling the VIP coordinator. So Mo is 521. Marlene is 560. I am 561. We will have those numbers on the board when we come in, so you'll know who we are and our name. If you can't remember our number, just say Paradise Volunteer Coordinator, and we'll answer you. Again, depending on what's going on, sometimes that number goes out of your brain. That's okay. Say, hey, Paradise Volunteer Coordinator, VIP Smith, I'm Paradise, and we'll get back to you. So let's talk a little more about these different situations. Here's an example of things that are life-threatening: stroke, heat stroke, anaphylaxis, unconsciousness. These are kind of no-brainers, right? We know what's a really serious situation. Could be, a broken leg that has a bone that is poking through the skin. That's life-threatening. Non-life-threatening, just your basic injury, a bruise, twisted ankle, maybe a scrape, slight cut. Could be a safety issue of some kind. Separated party, which means missing person. We don't like to use the word missing person. A separated party is a party that has not checked in like they were supposed to, and we're not sure where they are. Because we try not to use personal information, because these channels are open to the public, and there are people that do listen in what's going on in the park. Then the resource issues would be things like we've already talked about. Vandalism, hey, there's been a rock fall on the trail, it's still accessible, but it's partly covered. Somebody's harassing an animal, destruction of vegetation, and I talk to them and they won't come off the trail, that kind of thing. Or back on the trail. People off trail who are not swimming in frozen lake, some people, or Shadow Lake especially, over at sunrise, people's favorite pastime. Those are both closed to swimming. A bear nearby. If the bear is on the trail and the crowd, do crowd control if you can, but sometimes you need help because those crowds grow. There's a bear, and everybody runs to it. Yeah. Drone, don't call dispatch if the owner doesn't comply. That's the only time we would call dispatch. Otherwise, yeah, you can let us know that we've talked to a drone person. It's good for us to know about that, because if we're down in the parking lot area, then we can watch for them to make sure they really come back. So who do you need to contact? If it's life-threatening or non-life-threatening, it will always be dispatch. If it's other stuff and you need help, call your coordinator. An option for you. If you've just passed another rover that you know we were talking 5 minutes ago, and you need help, and you know, well, they're probably just 5 minutes away, you can call them directly. So you can say, VIP Smith, this is VIP Dietz on Sunrise. Hey, I'm over here and I can use your help. Can you come back and help me with this thing going on over here? Usually do that with no problem. Okay. So we need to examine the scene, know your location. If it's an injury or illness, there's several things that you want to collect before you're calling. And again, we've talked about the first aid stuff, and well, if it's CPR, well, you're going to have all the stuff you need to know right away on that, and it's not that much of a threat because of the non-life threatening. You say, yes, it appears the person has a sprained ankle, possibly broken. They don't believe that they can walk out on their own, so they're going to need assistance to come out. Now, dispatch will probably ask you some more detailed questions, and that's all good. Always try to use generic language like a person. If they want to know if it's male or female, they'll ask you. But we try not to use any names. Marlene reminded me. Okay. I'm also going to talk about one other thing. Oftentimes we have this happen where a visitor comes up to you that then becomes what we call a reporting party, or an RP. Because we do like our acronyms, or our initials, as we say in the park, don't we? When a visitor reports an incident to you, try to get their name, email, and phone number. Sometimes they don't want to give it out. And this may be needed for follow-up because they were the witness. That's why they're the reporting party. They're the one with the actual information. Have them describe what they know and take you to the scene if they possibly can, especially if it's a really big incident that's going on. The idea is we want to get you over there with your radio on the scene so that we have communication, so that we can get other resources to you as needed, right? So that's the check, call, and then the care. Now I keep bringing that back in. Okay, depending on the incident, do your best to keep them with you until help arrives. Again, because they're the person that has more knowledge about it. Sometimes they aren't able to stick around, so that's why it's nice to have their information. If another ranger needs to do some follow-up with them after the incident is over, or a week later or something like that. If they have pictures or videos, do what you can to get those to rangers, like myself, or Marlene, or Mo, or get it down to the people in the visitor center, the rangers down there, or whatever you can do. Some people, iPhone to iPhone, count. I got it. I don't have an iPhone, it doesn't work that same way. Sorry. But we want to have those things if possible, because sometimes that's really important, especially, as Marlene had mentioned, if it's graffiti. We need to know what it looks like, and it's helpful if you can also get a picture that kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of the location where it might be as well. I had one last year that was up, reported to be on First Burrows. Yeah, halfway up to the top of First Burrows. That's a lot further away than just First Burrows, which I always kind of think, well, is that at the top, or is it at the bottom, or somewhere in between? Fortunately, because I had pictures, as I was going up, I said, oh, I see what's way behind the end. So it's got to be right over in here, because it was several feet off track. So that's the importance of the pictures. So reporting party is a really important thing. Okay, scenarios. So let's talk about a real quick example here. So a visitor comes up to you with blood on their hand. They explain they slipped and fell on some rocks. So think through, what is the scene? What's going on here? Shout it out.
They're walking to you into their own power.
They're walking into their own power. That's good. They're upright. They're talkative.
First, they offer them a moist towelette.
Do they want help?
They didn't want to.
I think it's best to say, well, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Do you want some help? They say, well, no, I don't really need any help. Do you have a Band-Aid? I mean, you don't really know for sure where the conversation will go, right? Some people might say, "Oh, yeah, I'm getting woozy," and maybe they really are. That now is a different situation than where it just started, because some people will faint at the sight of their own blood. You know,
It doesn't say it, yes.
it doesn't say that yet here, but I'm having you try to start thinking about beyond what is the initial contact or the initial scene that you see. You have to start thinking just a little bit bigger. It's important because ultimately it will determine what you will call, who you will call, and what you need to say. So again, I'm not saying what really is going to happen here. This is just all we know at the beginning. But the things that you should be thinking about is, so are you okay? Do you need help? How are you feeling? Those are all good questions to answer, or for them to answer, because it gives you a clue as to how serious is this? Is this becoming an injury that isn't life-threatening, but it's more than just I'm going to give the person a Band-Aid and let them put it on themselves? Okay? So in this particular case, let's assume, oh, I'm just fine, but you have a Band-Aid. Then what are you going to do? So you're going to supply them the Band-Aid and allow them to put it on themselves. I would encourage you to say, I would be happy to take the wrapper from you. Because otherwise it may end up, probably inadvertently, not on purpose, out on the trail somewhere. You'll have to pick it up later in. So that's what I try to do in those cases. Would you call anybody in this case now? No, because you've handled it. It's all done. Okay. What I'd like to do now is to kind of break you up into groups, 6 different little groups. So I think if we take this side of the radio and this side of the radio in like 2 rows at a time, the way the chairs are laid out, see if you can't kind of become a little group. And I'm going to hand out these items here to each group. We have the pictures of the things on the radio and then how they work, and then on the back is, you know, all the things you need to think about and that kind of stuff. Okay, you can hand out, we're going to hand out a couple of radios to each group as well. Just all the people that are in the 2 rows. So this whole group right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand out to each one of the teams your own little scenario. And what I want you to do is discuss as a team, what information do you know? What do you gather about this particular scene? Think through, what do I need to do? How do I respond to the people involved in this situation? Do I need to make a call? And if so, who do I need to call? And at what level is this thing? Is it a red, life-threatening, yellow, non-life-threatening, or green, no big deal? And I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to talk these through.
A large family group has set up a picnic area in the Meadow Rover Visitor Center. A rover has informed them that they need to move and explain why, yet they made no effort to move. English may be an issue for some, but others do it by themselves. What now?
Pass out. It's triple. I don't want to more information.
Are we going to call?
Give them
would like the group in the back over there to do for me, number one, is please turn on your radio. Just turn it on. Whoever's going to speak on it, you're going to show us how this will be done with your scenario. So just turn it on, and then will you change to the common one channel? You there? Okay. We will find out in just a moment. And you are VIP Ingram?
Yes.
561 VIP Ingram on one.
Yeah, I did.
You didn't hold it down long.
VIP Indra.
Did you hear that? Woohoo! Perfect. I can read it. Yeah, of course, we didn't have to wear the dark mask, but that's okay. Okay, so the reason I want her to go to COM 1 is because that means we are basically offline from the repeaters and dispatch doesn't have to be bothered. While you were talking, I kind of clandestinely behind the scenes called dispatch and said, you're doing training with the radios and we will be on COM 1 just so they're aware. They do have the ability to catch into COM 1 sometimes, so I wanted them to be aware so they could ignore whatever might be happening on that one, because they are pretty limited in staff this year. Mention that. Okay, tell us what your scenario was. Somebody else can read it.
I will. Rover meets up with frantic parent on Dead Horse Creek Trail. Parent indicates her 10 and 12-year-old boys have taken off and she cannot see them. Boys are, quote, normal boys for their age and have no special gear.
Okay, so what did you all decide this was? Was this like a red, yellow, or green incident?
We had to ask the questions first about
Okay.
how long they've been gone.
Right? Very good. Which direction? Where did you see them last?
And does she want us to bring in extra help?
That's not necessarily really going to hurt. They're probably always going to want you to bring in extra help, but
That's true.
you don't know for sure if it's necessary just okay. But you're right, you need to ask them a bunch more questions. All of our scenarios, by the way, if you haven't figured it out, are pretty sketchy. But that's not unusual. I think you've been involved with enough stuff yourself on the trails and you've been the rover to do recognize that. So then, what would you be wanting to say and who would you be wanting to call? Let's assume you asked the questions and you determined, what did you decide you wanted to be? You didn't get that part? Okay, so let's finish it for you. They've been gone for 30 minutes. Tried calling their cell phones. They're not answering. Now, of course, we know maybe the cell phone isn't accessible wherever they are. So that's not telling us a whole lot, but at least they've tried. Where did you see them last? Well, they were just a half a mile over this way. I would probably say, well, let's go see if we can find them. Let's go to the last place you were. Don't panic yet. I'm here to help you. When you get over there, you've talked to some other people along the way, and you've seen a couple of boys. Here's how they're dressed. Nope, haven't seen them. Nope, haven't seen them. Somebody might say, yeah, I saw them. They were just right over here. You might be able to, but let's say nobody's seen them. You can't find them. So that's where we're at now.
I think it would be important to know where they parked too, in case if we're going back that, so when we do call, we can provide that information as well.
Very good thought, yes. If you gathered that information, that's perfect. So who are you going to call? Not Ghostbusters. Let's just get that joke over with.
Yellow, non-life-threatening.
Yellow, probably non-life-threatening at this point.
Depending
We
on the
hope.
weather.
We don't have any evidence that it's life-threatening. It certainly could be, but we don't know enough yet. Nobody knows enough yet. But it is an issue that's a separated party. So you're going to call who?
Dispatch.
Dispatch. Okay, so go ahead and call dispatch. I'll pretend I'm dispatch.
Dispatch VIP Ingram on COM 1.
Dispatch.
I have a recording party that is stating that their 10 and 12-year-old boys have been separated for the last 30 minutes.
Do you know where they were last seen?
They were last seen on the Dead Horse Creek Trail. The intended route was to go back to the Jackson Visitor Center. They're also parked in the lower parking lot of the Jackson Visitor Center.
Is the recording party with you?
Yes, they are.
Do you want some assistance?
Yes, please.
Okay. So what would be happening then behind the scenes is dispatch would probably calling law enforcement. They'd be talking with them, saying, here's what we know, and they would start sending somebody that way. And then there would be a lot more conversation going on. And in fact, if they don't find somebody quickly, there will be somebody that will become what we call an IC or an incident commander. They will take charge of the scene. At that point in time, oftentimes they would be maybe down to Jackson Visitor Center. If another rover is available, we might send them up to help and maybe escort that person down to find an incident commander because it's good to keep the reporting party there. And obviously they want to stay there. Many times they want to be out there helping too, but they might become a liability. So anyway, good job.
We talked about making sure what they were wearing. One that we didn't really know is if they had pictures, I mean, we could email it. But if we're talking about if there was another phone that we could text it to, it would be a lot quicker. But then again, there's not just a
Dispatch may ask you about that, and if you have self-service to do it, that may or may not work depending on what's going on. I had pictures that I didn't have self-service, so just go with the flow. Dispatch is really going to be really good about working on that. Okay, great.
I have a question.
Oh, you raised your hand, that means your group is next.
No, I had a question.
Yeah.
So, before we would call incident, like, is there a way to call, like, just other rovers in general to say, hey, has any other rovers seen, like, here's kind of what's going on, are there any rovers anywhere that, so you're not calling a specific rover, but you're just looking in that area. How would you call that if you just want to call generally?
I would not be wanting to call out to all of the other rovers for something like this. If you really wanted to find out more about something like that, call your coordinator first. But since you really know you need to call dispatch, dispatch now knows they're going to take this as their incident, and they will direct everything from there. Your coordinator will probably have heard it on the radio as well. Now, they may choose to call you directly, and then we might want to go to COM 1 or COM 2 or something if we have that ability. And then we can have some discussion offline. But really in this case, because there's probably going to, there may be a SAR, we need to let the professionals, the paid staff, take control.
Okay.
But we are going to go on with this group. So what's your incident?
It was a big ice.
Oh yeah, we were with this group. I don't want to do it. I've done too much.
A mother bear and two cubs are moving back and forth across the trail near Myrtle Falls.
Never happens. Especially not that spot. So, what?
I did have that happen.
Yeah. Well, see, then you know exactly what to do.
It was actually the trail going between the inn and the steps, the trail going up from the old ranger station. And I had a visitor running toward me and saying, oh my gosh, there's a bear, there's a bear.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm thinking, yeah, okay, radio. So I went up and OMG. There is mom on one side and two cubs on the other, very close.
Yeah.
So I called 560 and let her know, and she and several other rangers came because there were 5 access points.
Yep.
So we just blocked the access points, let the mom and cubs do their thing. It was late in the season, and they had just come down to eat.
Right.
Well, I was just reaching the end of my shift, and it took 2 hours, but it was so good. And I was in a spot where they were far enough away, and of course visitors had gathered wanting to know what's up. And because of where I was, I could let one visitor at a time come and take a look and then hit the road. So it was kind of cool, very scary when I first came around that corner.
Sure. So, didn't know we had the perfect person in the game. Just random. Things happen. Would somebody like to practice doing the call, or are we good to move on?
Let's go to the next one.
Go to the next one. Okay. Well, we'll go here in the middle.
A large group of worshipers gathered between the skyline and Dead Horse Creek, complete with the ram's horns blowing. They're holding a prayer service. How do you get them back on trail?
This happened to me. Yeah, that one happened in Paradise. And they were really, they were not cooperative.
So, anyway, we'll go on. So, what do you see this scene? What are you going to attempt to do?
Well, initially, we would go out probably as an individual, try to get the attention of the leader and bring him to the trail, talk to them, say if they're out in the meadow, to bring them out to the dance floor where it's paved, they're not doing any damage.
Right.
Probably before I would have done that, I would have got on the dispatch to see if this is an authorized event that's taking place. And then if they're uncooperative, then back to dispatch, back to 560, and I'm sure at that point there will be an IC and somebody's going to call out extra help.
And thank you for the mention of the special use permits. That is something that last season and again this season we have access to that calendar. And one of the things we will endeavor to do every day is to write up there if we know of any special use permits in the areas that we are roving. I mean, it has special permits all over the park, but only the ones that are in the area that we might be roving. It'll be on the board and it'll say who they are, what it's for, and we can actually pull up the actual thing that says how many people are involved and where they can actually be. So you can see that stuff before you leave if you are interested.
They wouldn't be allowed off trail, would they?
It's called a special use permit, and that can vary depending on who issued it is the best way I can say it. That has been something that hasn't been perfectly synchronized in the National Park Service, and not even here yet that I'm aware of, unless you know of something that's changed. But yeah.
The point of the special use permit is to allow as much constitutionally permitted activity to happen with as little impact to the environment and other visitors as possible. So they're going to look for a balance between those two things. And probably for a religious celebration, there's no particular reason, probably, that religious celebration is going to need to be off the trail. And so unless they can make a compelling argument that it needs to be, they're not going to issue a permit to be off the trail.
Now, other incidents such as spreading of ashes specifically must be off of a trail. So therefore, that one would be allowed to be off trail, but it's also very specific how many are in the party, exactly where they can be, how far off the trail they have to be. So yeah, it depends on the permit. And that's why it's nice to know we have access to that, and we'll have that information available for anybody that's going out and might be going to that area at that time that day.
And
So
do they
perfect.
carry a permit with them?
I believe they're supposed to carry it with them, yes. That doesn't mean that we are going, remember, we're not enforcers. So we're not going to, if we see them out there, you could, if you've looked at the permit, if you chose to do that, then you could say, yeah, that seems that's the right location, about the right number of people. I might choose to personally stand there for a while so that I could explain to other people coming by, because we know what happens. How come they get to be off trail? So having the uniform presence there to explain they have followed the process to get a special use permit that allows them to do an activity out there. Got it. Last question.
I know photographers have to have permits, so.
For some things, yes, not all things.
Oh, okay. I don't mean like everything, but
Right.
the ones that are in specific spots.
Like for that are wanting to sell the pictures or
Yes.
things like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not.
And that can mean even a wedding photographer because they're selling their services to the wedding, and
Right.
yeah, they may need a,
I
they
meant
do need
professional
persons.
photographers. So they would have a permit? if they did
They're
that?
supposed to
Are
have a
they ever on
permit.
trail, or-
They're supposed to have a permit, and they would not be being allowed off trail.
Okay.
As a photographer, I can correct that a little bit because there was a lawsuit recently. A professional photographer sued the National Park Service who had required him to have a permit, and he said, "Why do I need a permit to take the same picture that the person next to me it doesn't need a permit for just because I'm going to be selling it?" And he won that. So unless the photographer is setting up equipment or requiring to be off trail or doing something that's going to have a major impact either on the environment or on visitors, like filming an automobile commercial or something like that, unless it is at that level, they no longer do require a permit.
Good change. Thanks, Kevin.
And I will just add that we do have some information from the park in relation to special use permits and the concessionaires, and I will include that in the information that's coming out in a couple more weeks.
And the important thing in what I said is that if they don't have a permit, they still have to follow all the rules of the park. So if they're off the trail someplace and they say, "Oh, well, I'm a photographer, I can be off the trail," that's not true. If they have a special use permit to do specific photography off the trail, that's fine, but they'd have to have a special use permit for that. Just because they're a photographer does not give them permission to go off trail.
If they were off trail, would you ask them to show you that special?
If they're off the trail, then you're going to ask them to come back to the trail in the same way you would for anybody else. And if they say, "Well, I'm a photographer," then you'd say, "Well, do you have a special use permit?" And if they don't, they have to come back.
Would you ask them to see that permit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You could ask to see that permit. If they are telling you that that permit allows them to go off the trail, then sure.
Okay, we need to move on
Yep.
to this group.
A group of 20-something hikers is blaring music from an iPad as they go merrily along. What do you do?
So, good question. What do you do?
Well, I think one of the first things is if they're on the trail, you approach them and say, "Hi, how are you?" Kind of establish a rapport with them. Where are they from? How are they doing? And that the music is great. I'm so glad you like listening. Do you have maybe earphones that you could use? And if they don't, then, explain to them, educate them that there are other hikers out and there's animals and stuff. This could be very disturbing to, and would ask them to turn it low enough that maybe they alone can hear it, but not everybody else hiking on the trail.
Perfect. And so, do you need to call anybody?
No.
What was the problem?
The problem was there was a group of 20-somethings that are walking along the trail with music blaring and just going merrily along.
Okay.
What do you do?
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We thought if we watched them for a bit and if further down the trail they turned it back up, then it might warrant calling in for a non-emergency call for a resource issue.
That would be fine. Probably call your coordinator. Let them decide what you might want to do, and depending on where the coordinator is, maybe they can come help too. Since we have a different uniform, even though we all know they don't recognize, there is something about the badge. This isn't a law enforcement one, but I don't know, it just does make a little difference that they might be willing to listen to another person. If they still are non-compliant, then that's when we would be calling law enforcement because they've been warned twice, and that's not acceptable. We don't want to get them in trouble, but some people choose poorly and make themselves a target for trouble. It's the best way I can explain that. And I'm not sure why, but it seems to be their nature.
We also thought that picking up the radio and calling it in too soon would be kind of considered sort of hostile.
Yeah, if you called it in too soon, especially in front of them, it would probably be very hostile. And the idea is to try and de-escalate, like Marlene was explaining earlier. So that was really good.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to this front group.
So our scenario is a large family group has set up a picnic area in the meadow above Paradise Visitor Center. A rover has informed them they need to move and explained why, yet they made no effort to move. English may be an issue for some, but others do comprehend. What now? And so we had discussed trying to, maybe if there was another, if we knew there was somebody else, another rover that we just passed, we could ask them to help. Trying to give education and then calling in as a resource issue if they didn't.
Can you read there's a part of that in there that says another rover has informed them. I think that's what it says, something like that.
A rover has informed them they need to move and explained why, yet they made no effort to move.
Right. So I just like that. I like that word because that word kind of sends up a little bit of a red flag in my brain when I hear informed them.
Yeah.
So it might have also been the approach that the other rover took. And so if you try the more pleasant de-escalation type of thing, make the connection of hurting the flowers that are growing out there that they came to see and enjoy. So that's why I kind of like that one because of the way that word was stuck in there just to think about. Okay, one more group here.
Okay. Our scenario was a visitor meets a rover at the junction of Skyline Trail and Waterfall Trail. The visitor reports that another visitor has slipped and broken his ankle on the Alta Vista Trail above the lower Skyline Junction. So in this case, our group decided that we would go ahead and call dispatch, let them know that we'd received this report, where we are, that we're going up there with the reporting party to get some more information, check out the situation, and that we would call back once we had some on-site information.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that one?
Well, one thing, this is secondhand information, so first of all, we don't know if it's a broken ankle, it could be a sprained ankle. Right. We also don't know if they have other injuries that, the person didn't know about. So there's a lot we really don't know at this point. Even that it's a broken ankle, like I said. So, yeah.
So again, your approach of calling dispatch to let them know we've got a potential situation, we've had a reporting party. Hopefully, like we were talking before with that, get them to take you to where they were. If they don't, at least try to get the information from that person. But you going there first, then before doing anything more, is very important to really get. We really want the radio on the scene as much as anything, in case there is really something more to it than what we know at that point. Perfect. Well, I appreciate everybody's efforts on all of this. We just have a few concluding slides and a few other pieces of information to go through. I want to make sure that you understand dispatch is a secondary 911 call center. That means any phone call that comes in from inside the park boundary to a 911 center, which may be in Tacoma or the Enumclaw Police Department, will immediately be transferred to our 911 dispatch center here. They become a 911 dispatch center. Their primary responsibility is life safety, and they're the people in charge of getting people from emergency medical services, fire, law enforcement, the search and rescue types of parties, or if the helicopter needs to fly for some reason to maybe pick somebody off of the mountain. The secondary things they do is they also keep control or watch over a lot of backcountry patrols. You've probably heard people call in, a lot of times they're a 600 number or a 400 number, which are the backcountry volunteers, who are saying, I'm starting my patrol. And that's because they have a planned itinerary and they actually have a tracker and they can see in dispatch where they are throughout the day, and then they have to return. We're out of, we're done with our patrol at the end of the day, because they have a schedule that they're trying to meet, and so they have to be tracked to make sure that they're safe. They also can call in the resource or general rangers if they need help. They will also write maintenance people there. We've got an overflowing toilet. We've got water that won't turn off in a bathroom. We've got garbage cans that are overflowing. Lockouts, jump starts, distress pets in the car. They'll end up calling one of our Ravens, which is our other volunteers, the roadside assistance for visitors in need, right? If they're on duty, sometimes on the Sunrise side, we only have one and they aren't there during midweek, so it will be law enforcement. And then lost and found. Anything that's turned in, when you do find lost and found, turned into the visitor center, that ultimately ends up with dispatch. So that would be where people would be directed to go to dispatch. If they think they've lost something, that's where they would go to try and find it.
Where is dispatch physically located?
Dispatch physically is located down here in the administration building in T Woods, about a half a mile down that way. Thank you. This is a very tough year on dispatch. Until August, we have 2 dispatchers. It is Trish Stanfield and Jacqueline Colley. So they're basically like 2 days on, 2 days off type of thing. They're very good. I've talked to them. They are aware. They said this is just a part of the job. But we want to stress to you, make sure you need to call them before you call them. If you can't take care of it yourself or with us. And when you do then call them, recognize that they are going to probably be quite busy, and it may take longer than you are used to for them to return your call. They've heard you, just be patient, okay? Now, I was reminded it's good to know about if I am trying to reach somebody and I don't get a response, then I wait a little while and try again. If I still don't get a response, and it can wait, then I should return a no contact, and then my name would be 561, or it'd be VIP Smith. And since it was Brian, it'd be VIP Commander. I didn't know I knew your name. Okay, their hours are then a little bit reduced from what would normally be done, because again, it's going to be hard on them. 7 to 6. All off hours are handled by Enumclaw Police Dispatch on the other hours, so it goes there. So it's just important to know what's going on there and be patient with them this year. If you get called in on a carry-out, whether you're the first or last person on the scene, and you say, hey, we do have to do a carry-out of this person, you may get asked if you would like to participate in that. It's important you understand you do not have to be involved in that in any way, shape, or form if you choose not to. Remember your own limitations. Your personal safety first again, right? You can walk out with them if you want to, but you might be in the way. So if you're really not going to participate, it may be time for you to leave, and that's just fine. Nobody is going to think of you any more or less one way or the other. If you agree to help, whoever is in charge of the scene at that place will then instruct you on what they would like you to do. Because if you don't know, well, you'll learn. You get on-the-job training real fast. Wildlife, remember, keep wildlife wild. When you encounter wildlife at your distance, remember, we're in their home, right? People like to view wildlife and take pictures, especially of our bears. Help keep visitors far enough away so as not to disturb the wildlife. And we don't want them getting used to people around them. So this goes back to our, response way in the back there with personal experience with the bear. Always good to explain the rule of thumb. If you can hold your thing out like this and cover that person, then I'm far enough away. So I'm just far enough away from the person in the very back of the room. I'm too close to the rest of them. Oh, I won't go there. If you need help as the crowd grows, radio to your coordinator, or if you just passed another rover 5 minutes ago and you want to contact them personally, that's fine too. But you know, sometimes the crowd grows, you call 560, they get more people on board. Wildlife is attracted by smelly things, especially the bears. Make sure you get stuff stored properly, bear cans, dispose of trash in the properly placed spaces. And always explain that human food is harmful to wildlife. It actually makes them sick. And that includes birds, by the way. Pets and service animals. Pets are allowed in the 3 Ps of the C. I like to remember that. 3 Ps in the C. Parking lots, picnic areas, paved roads open to the public, and car campgrounds. So that wouldn't be the wilderness campgrounds, for example, like Sunrise Camp, which is on the Wonderland Trail out by Shadowland. At all times, pets must be in a cage or crate, or with and under the control of their owner and on a leash not more than 6 feet in length and in those areas. Service animals. A service animal in the park means a dog. Okay? A dog that is a service animal is an animal that is trained to perform a very specific service that that individual needs, that they cannot do on their own. Service animals are amazing, and it's amazing what we can train those dogs to do for people that have some sort of a disability. They have to still be on a leash unless the service they provide requires them to be off a leash. Such as a person has a distress order, the dog can go up to a person that's coming close and alert the person that this person might set me off. And that can't be done if they're on a leash. But they can be called under voice command and they'll come back to them. You know if it's a trained service animal, don't you? Okay, questions you can ask, there's 2 things. Is your dog a service animal? I hate the question, it's very leading. They're always going to say, oh yeah. Thanks for reminding me to say yes. So we always like to say better, what's your dog's name? I love dogs. Can I pet one? If that's what they want. If they say no, it's a service animal, then you can always say, oh, thank you for letting me know. What service has your dog been trained to provide for you? Now this doesn't have, you don't want them to reveal their condition. Just what has the dog actually been trained to perform its duty for you? Drones, can someone fly a drone in the park? Yes, but the superintendent's compendium goes a little further than the FAA control that says launching, landing, or operating is illegal in the national park without his, because it isn't man, his specific in writing permission to do so. If you see one, try to locate the operator, politely ask them to land it, and then take it back to their vehicle. If they comply, you don't need to call it in. If the operator becomes argumentative, doesn't comply, back away, because you don't want to put yourself in harm's way. Safety first. Call dispatch for assistance. Try to have a description of the operator of the drone and your location. Take a picture if you dare. Might escalate the situation, so just be aware of that. And finally, guns in the park, a reminder, state of Washington, it is legal to carry openly a gun in the park. That includes long guns and pistols. They can also, if they have a Washington State concealed pistol license, carry a concealed pistol in the state. But guns cannot be taken into most buildings in the park, and most of the buildings that you can't take it, they have to have a sign and it will say, no guns allowed. You can't take it out of your holster, you can't fire a gun in the park. Any of those things would be illegal. Unfortunately, people carrying guns makes everybody nervous, especially with what's been going on in the world lately. I don't expect you to confront anybody carrying a gun, but kind of try and be observant of them. And if you see them starting to act a little bit, maybe what seems strange, it would be a good idea to call dispatch and say, this is where I am, and I see a person carrying whatever, they're at this location. And they're starting to, what's making you think that something might be coming up soon and you need to notify and get help. So that's it for my presentation.
All right, so thank you again so much for being here, and still at time to do the paperwork and interacting and participating in the training today. We do have some other trainings coming up this summer.
Yes, so keep an eye out. We will be sending out information on first aid CPR training and also additional DEI training. So things like implicit bias and everything in that realm. And we'll have multiple sessions, hopefully on both sides of the mountain. So just keep your ears open and we'll have that information over to you as soon as we have that information.
Was Leave No Trace another?
Leave No Trace as well, sorry.
No.
Yes, definitely Leave No Trace training as well.
So just remember last year we offered some training with geology, glaciology, and ecology. So this year we're trying to do some training that's more on the cultural and natural versus the natural, I should say. And so we are also hoping to do something related to Native Americans and the heritage that we have here at the park.
How often can first aid training be taken?
We don't have it set up yet, so we're still in discussion on that, right? So hopefully we can do it this year. It's all going to depend on COVID levels. That's just the reality for us. So we'll see, but we'll provide information. And I also, just as a quick reminder, I have two people that I don't have paperwork on that are here today. Darlene and Jack, if you could come see me at the end of training to make sure that I have your paperwork. That way we can get you onto the Rover rolls. And now that you've attended and participated in today's training, as of this afternoon, you're welcome to start emailing that Meadow Rover address and start requesting some roves. So again, just remember your name, what day you want to rove, when you want to start, when you want to end, and if you want to request camping, what date you're arriving, what date you're departing, and if you're going to be in a tent or a camper RV, and then the length of that. Okay.
And also please remember that we don't know 100% for sure when Sunrise will open. The goal has always been about July 1st, but we don't know whether that's going to happen. So it's difficult for me to, I'm happy to put people on the calendar starting that day, but recognize that it may not happen. So go ahead and you can still send me stuff, but we can't start over there before July 1st for roving.
But Paradise Meadow Rover operations are up and running daily.
Come every day for the rest of the summer.